Hello, welcome to the Maya Toolbelt. This is Michael. Today we're going to go over the last option in the Surfaces menu, which is Bevel Plus. You can find these in the Surfaces module. This pull-down menu here, Surfaces, Surfaces, Bevel Plus. And if we open the options, it looks like a lot of stuff here, but it's actually a bit simpler than it seems. And they just give you a lot of different styles for your bevel that you can choose from. But this uses curves to create a beveled surface. It's very similar to the bevel tool, except that the bevel tool is, if you saw the bevel tool video, and you can see that really easily if you click here, it just simply takes the curve and creates a beveled surface along the curve. What Bevel Plus does is it creates more of a solid shape from the curve, and hopefully you'll see what I mean as we get into it. To demonstrate, first I'm going to go to Create, NURBS Primitives, Circle. I'm just going to create a simple circular curve, hide my grid so you can see better. I'm going to go to Surfaces, Bevel Plus, and in the options here I'm just going to go to Edit, Reset, make all my settings the default values, and just hit Bevel. So, and your shape may be different depending on how large your circle was, and whether your scene is set to meters or centimeters or so on. It just depends on the settings you have. But for this object, it created this disc shape. So you can see it's solid. It's not just the beveled line, beveled surface along the curve. It's also solid in between. That's different from the bevel tool. And if I select my curve and scale it, you see we have history. So the surface will change shape based on the scale of the original curve. Okay, let's go back to the options here. Edit Surfaces, Bevel Plus options, and take a look at what we have. Lots of things here, but let's just go through them real quick. You'll see I have attached surfaces checkboxes grayed out. We'll get to that later. Then you have Create Bevel at start and at end, which by default are both checked. And what this simply means is that the beveled surface, and when I say the beveled surface, I mean the diagonal surfaces here. You have the extruded surface, which is this flat spot in the middle, this flat surface in the middle, and then the beveled surfaces, which are these diagonal surfaces on either side. If you create bevel at start, it's meaning where the curve is, that's the start of the bevel, and it creates a beveled surface here. And at the end, which is after the extrusion, then the beveled surface ends and it creates a bevel there. So if I were to delete this surface, select this circle curve and uncheck at start, but at end is selected still, hit apply, you'll see that I do not have a beveled surface at the start of the beveled object, which starts at the curve. I do have it at the end here. Delete that, select my curve, uncheck at end, but check start, hit apply. You see I get the opposite result where it bevels at the start where the curve is located and does not bevel at the end. Delete that and uncheck them both, and you'll see that it just kind of extrudes outward. So you can create a simple solid shape with your curve if you want to undo or uncheck the create beveled checkboxes here and just have this solid shape from the circle or whatever shape you've made. It's a pretty easy way to do that. Alright, but we're going to turn on both of these and go to bevel width, bevel depth, and extrude distance. I'm just going to keep the default settings here, edit reset, and apply. And this is the result with the default values. If I go over here in the channel box under Bevel Plus 1, you'll see width, depth, and extrude depth. These are those same values, 0.1, 0.1, 0.25 up here, 0.1, 0.1, 0.25 right here. So you can change these easily by just clicking and dragging with your middle mouse button. If you hold down Control, you get a little bit more of a granular change in the shape. So width is how far out the extrusion projects from the original curve. Depth is how thick the extruded surfaces are. So you'll see that my extruded I'm sorry, how thick the beveled surfaces are. The extruded surface here is in the middle. It's staying the same shape, but with depth changing, the beveled surfaces are getting wider. And then with extrude depth is how thick the extruded surface is. And now that gets wider while the beveled surfaces remain the same shape from the depth value. So depth controls the width of the beveled or the angled surfaces, and extrude depth controls the width or thickness of the flat surface here. So you can create a much larger shape and adjust your beveled shapes and how far out it goes with width. You'll see another option here under the channel box says bevel inside, and by default is off. If you turn that on, and you can just click in here and type in 1 and enter, because this is a Boolean operation. Boolean meaning it's either on or off. So off is, and if you know anything about computer programming, you know it's all ones and zeros, right? So off is 0, on is 1. So if I type in 1, enter, it turns on. If I type in 0, enter, it turns off. Off is default. If I type in 1, enter, turn on, you'll see that what happens is that you'll see that the width of the beveled object does not extend past the curve. So the curve is like a boundary with bevel inside turned on. So now when I adjust the width of the beveled object, it's the inner circles that go in and out, while the outer shape remains where it is. And you can have a negative width, like so. So it kind of concaves inward. But you'll see that the curve is still acting as a boundary. It's not going to go beyond this curve's position. You can go in or out like this. And that's with bevel inside turned on. We turn it back off, which is default. You'll see that the curve indicates where it starts, but then it bevels outward or extrudes outward from there. So when I adjust the width, like so, it can go all the way out here or in here. But you'll see that the caps of the beveled object stay on the curve, like so. And those are your basic controls for the Bevel Plus. You can get into more details, of course, which we're going to do. So back to the options here, you'll see bevel inside curves. This checkbox is off. That is what that bevel inside setting is. So if this has been checked on, when we created it, bevel inside would be on. Uncheck it, bevel inside is off. Simple as that. Then we skipped over create cap. Now the cap is this large surface on the top and bottom of my beveled object. And by default they're both on, which means it created this cap surface at the start where the curve is, and at the end on the opposite side of the beveled object. If I delete this and uncheck at start but keep at end, select my curve, hit apply, you see now I do not have a cap on the bottom or where the curve is at the start, but I do at the end on top. Delete this, select my circle, uncheck at end and check at start. Apply. You'll see the opposite is true. The cap is on the bottom where the curve is, where the object starts, but is not at the top where it ends. And obviously with both unchecked, you will not get a cap. And this is more like what the bevel tool gives you. No caps involved. Then the bevel tool also doesn't give you quite as many bevel styles to choose from. That's the plus side of the Bevel Plus command. Delete this. I'll turn these caps back on. And from then we have our big list of outer and inner bevel styles. We're going to skip over that for now and just kind of move on down past that. And we have this checkbox, same as outer style. You'll see that my inner bevel style options are all grayed out because same as outer style is checked, meaning that whatever I choose for the outer bevel style, the inner bevel style will also choose that same setting. If I uncheck this, I can choose a different one for the inner bevel as opposed to the outer bevel. Check it back on for now. You'll see use tolerance is grayed out. I can't use any tolerance at the moment, and I'll get into why in just a second. At the very top, you'll see that we have two tabs in our Bevel Plus option window. The Bevel tab and then the Output Options tab. Let's go to Output Options. You'll see here we have Output Geometry, NURBS, and Polygons. By default, this one goes to polygons, unlike the other surfaces commands, which by default go to NURBS. Then you have tessellation method. This is if you have polygons selected, you have different tessellation methods you can choose from, and sampling controls. If we turn on NURBS, you'll see those settings all go away. But with NURBS selected, if we go back to the Bevel tab, you'll notice that the things that were grayed out before are no longer grayed out. Attached surfaces is no longer grayed out, as well as the tolerance settings down here. So those settings were for NURBS output. If I go back to Output and choose Polygons, and back to Bevel, you'll see they're grayed out again, because these options do not apply to polygons. So let's choose NURBS, go back to the Bevel tab, and let's look at these new options that are available. Attached surfaces is checked on, and very similar to the Bevel tool, if I turn it off and hit Apply, you'll see I have my cap surface on both sides, and then I have my beveled surface on both sides, and then my extruded surface. So I have lots of different parts with attached surfaces unchecked. Let me undo and go back to before that. Let's do attached surfaces turned on and hit Apply. Now you'll notice that the caps are still separate. Just based on how NURBS are created, the caps have to be separate objects. But the beveled surface now is one object. The beveled surface and the extruded surface are together as one object. And that's with attached surfaces turned on. So let's delete that. And go down to the bottom, and we have tolerance. For use tolerance, you have a global and local value. If you choose global, you lose your tolerance slider because you're using a global setting that is set within Maya's preferences. And you can find that value and change it if you wish by going to Window, Settings, Preferences, Preferences. And then in this large window here, go to Settings. At the bottom, you'll have Tolerance. These are the tolerance values that are considered global to Maya. And we're dealing with positional tolerance here for this setting, which by default is 0.0001. So that's what the value is being used with a global tolerance. If you choose local and slide down here, you'll see a tolerance slider, and you can adjust your tolerance however you wish. And what tolerance does in this case, again, it's only available for NURBS surfaces. The lower the value, the more closely the resulting surface will match the curve, and the higher the tolerance, the more loosely the surface will follow the curve. So let's choose a low value first. Let's go back to the default setting, really. Oops, that also turns on polygons. Turn on NURBS again, hit back. So with a tolerance of 0.01, set my curve, hit Apply, and I'm just going to move these to the side, and hopefully we'll get a bit of a difference that we can tell them apart. If I increase this up to, say, I don't know, let's try a really big value, let's say 10. Really high value compared to 0.1, and hit Apply. Okay, yeah, you can definitely see a difference. If I select these, let me minimize this real quick. You'll see that the surfaces are very close together. They're not perfect, but they pretty closely match the caps and the beveled surface. They're pretty close together. But if you look at this one, you'll see that the caps extend outward a bit more, not nearly as close in accuracy to the beveled surface. Here's my curve right here. You can see that the surface extends beyond the curve's boundaries pretty generously. That's with a very much looser result. So that's what tolerance gives you. That's the difference. Let me delete all this stuff. Actually, I want to keep my curve. Let me open the outliner, which can be found under Window, Outliner, and select all my surfaces here and delete them, keeping my circle. Alright, back to our options. So that was tolerance and attached surfaces, which are the two options available for NURBS output geometry. Let's go back to polygons and take a look at all this stuff. First, we have tessellation method. You have count and sampling, and you'll see how our settings change depending on which method we use. With count, we have the face count slider, and you're essentially telling Maya how many polygons you want this resulting object to have, and it will try to match it as closely as possible. So with a face count of 200 and hit apply, and then if I go to display, heads up display, poly count, this will tell us how many polygons this object has, and this object has 330. It's a little bit more than our face count of 200, but that's because Maya got as close as it could and still maintaining the shape that we're asking it to make. If I increase this up to say 1500 or something really high, I'll move that over and hit apply. So with a face count of 1500, we get the result of about 2000 faces. You can slide this down to 600 or whatever. We can keep on adding, doing different results. This one has about 800. So just depending on how many faces you want, you can use face count, the count tessellation method, and adjust your face count slider to get your different results. Let's delete those and go to sampling. Sampling gives you a bit more of a fine-tuned control. You have different options here. The main ones we're going to look at first are the pull-down menus, which are along extrusion and along curve. So along extrusion, samples being 2, this is asking you how much tessellation or how much geometry you're wanting along the extruded surface. Hopefully I can demonstrate that easily. And the two available settings are complete and section. And then along curve is actually how many divisions along the curve direction going around. That's span or complete. And then we have sample sliders here for how much. Let's just use the default values first and hit apply. And this is what we've been getting. So you'll notice if I zoom in here and have these numbers to compare to, this surface here, the flat surface, is my extrusion. And we had 2 samples, so I have 2 spans here in my extrusion. And along curve, we had span selected and 6 samples. So that means in between each span on this curve we'll have 6 divisions. So let's delete this and change these numbers a little bit. How about we try 4 samples along extrusion and 2 samples along the curve spans. Hit apply, and you'll see the difference we get. You'll see our surface is a lot blockier. We don't have as many divisions around because our spans have been significantly decreased along the curve. But then our extrusion spans have increased. We have more divisions on the flat extruded surface. Also along the beveled surfaces as well, because of our 4 samples. And I want to just keep that here for now. If I close this for now and hit Control A to open the attribute editor. The attribute editor, you can change all these settings after the fact, and you can watch them update on the fly. So over here, if I go to the Bevel Plus tab in my attribute editor, you'll see a lot of these same settings. Bevel width, bevel depth, extrude distance, and so on. So we can adjust this with these sliders really easily and change our surface. Let's scroll down and you'll see we have polygon output options here and method, where you can choose between count and sampling again. And then if sampling is being used, you have your extrusion section and curve span, just like we had selected before. We can change these to complete extrusion from the extrusion section, and you see how the resulting surface changes. And we can increase and decrease our samples here and watch the difference happen. If you go back to extrusion section and then change the samples, you again see it update in real time. So if you don't quite get what you want right off the bat, you don't have to keep deleting it, tweaking it, making it again. No, that's not right. Delete it again. You can go in here in the attribute editor and just change them on the fly. We go to complete curve, increase the samples here like so. Using complete curve means that I'm only getting, in this case, 5 samples for the whole curve, which gives me a square shape. If I use curve span, that means between each span I'm getting 5 samples, which gives me a much rounder shape. And you can increase this again on the fly and watch it update and see how it looks. So while we're looking at things and updating them in real time, let's go ahead and change our bevel styles. You'll see here we have outer style curve, and if we click this little arrow, it takes us to the outer style curve tab where we can change the style. In the style drop down menu here, we have all the same settings or the same options as in the option window, which was under Surfaces, Bevel Plus options, and we have all these outer bevel styles to choose from. So first, by default, we have straight out. I'm going to zoom in here so hopefully you can see better, which simply just gives us a straight line from the extruded surface to the end of the beveled surface, just a straight diagonal. Then we choose straight in. You see it goes inward as opposed to straight out, which goes outward. Then you have convex out, which gives you a nice rounded look to the extrusion. It's not straight, and it's convex, meaning it is curved outward. And then you have convex inward, so it's still curved outward, but it's going in instead of out. You have concave out, so it gives us this caved in look. You can always remember concave, caved in. That's the alliteration I like to use. So it's caving in, but going out from the curve's original position. And concave in, same result, but going inward. Straight side edge. You'll see we have this very puffy, or what's the word, pillowed beveled effect. Straight side edge. Straight front edge. So we get this result. We get kind of a lip around. So if you're ever wanting to make like a, for example, a soda can, this is a very easy way to get that lip on the end of your soda can or any similar object. Straight front edge. Then you have straight corner, which kind of gives you a combination of both. You have the beveled lip here, and then also the top of the soda can effect, if you want to call it that. Convex side edge gives you this result, which is a little different from the convex out. See this convex out? This goes outward and then straight down. Convex side edge gives you this edge here, this lip to the convex shape. And then convex front edge, again, similar. Lots of different styles to choose from. Convex corner, concave side edge, concave front edge. This gives you an interesting trench around the edge of the shape. And then convex crease. You have this little stepped look for the beveled edge. So back in our options here, we'll see outer bevel style and inner bevel style. And like we said before, by default, inner bevel style matches the outer. What the inner bevel style is referring to is for things like text and such that have an outer curve and an inner curve, such as, say, the letter O in the alphabet. And so if you go to Create Text Options and Edit, Reset here, you'll see I'm not going to go through this too quickly, but I'm just going to type for text, say the capital letter O. And if you choose Bevel, you'll see we have all of our same options from the Bevel Plus tool, or the Bevel Plus command. And with the outer bevel style selected as something and the inner bevel style is the same. I'm just going to delete my circle over here and apply. So now we have the letter O. So you'll see here that our straight out outer bevel style is being used. We have our straight beveled surface with our extrude here, and the inner beveled surface of the O, the inside, is using the same. If I delete the O and go back to my text options here, instead of using straight out for my inner bevel style, I'll uncheck the same as outer style checkbox here. We can choose straight out for outer, but let's try something else. Let's say concave in for inner and apply. So now you'll see that the inside of the O is using a much different bevel style than the outside of the O. And that's what this is really referring to. Also, one side note, I've noticed that the Bevel Plus command does not always work, at least with this version of Maya I have now. I think hopefully newer versions might be a little bit better. But say if I close this, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, if I go to Surfaces, Bevel Plus, Options, okay, they've opened just fine. But I did have a moment where they did not open at all. And what worked to fix that issue is if you're running into that same issue, if you're trying to open the Bevel Plus options and it's not working, if you go to Create Text Options and then Edit, reset these settings and close this and then go back to Surfaces, Bevel Plus Options, then it hopefully should work. I did notice that that did fix it. So anyway, I think that pretty much covered everything in the Bevel Plus options. We've gone over all the outputs here and the bevel settings, and we've gotten all our different bevel styles, and hopefully you'll play with this and check out the bevel styles and you can see the applications for such things for your work. Hope you learned a little bit. Thanks again for watching. I hope you like, comment, subscribe. I definitely appreciate it. If you have any requests for future videos, let me know. And thank you again for watching. I'll talk to you later.